Okay, today is Thursday, March 19th. So the focus for learning today, Thursday, March 19th, is I can investigate tangent properties. Previously, we had learned that for a line to be tangent to a circle, the line intersects or touches the circle one time. And that point where the line intersects the circle, we call that the point of tangency. So today we're going to look more at the properties of tangents. But before we do that, I need you to pause the video right now, open your What Did I Do Today document, and type the focus for learning on the, this should say Thursday, on the Thursday, March 19th, because that's what today is, block. There we go. So, focus for learning, Thursday, March 19th. Okay, so let's talk about some properties of tangents. First, let's talk about what is true when a tangent to a circle and the radius of a circle meet. So, if a tangent and a radius, or it could be a diameter, meet, because remember the radius is just half the diameter. So, if a tangent and a radius meet, that means if they intersect, then they are perpendicular to each other. There we have perpendicular. Remember the symbol for perpendicular is an upside down T, and if they meet and they are perpendicular, they form a right angle, which is 90 degrees. So if we look over here at our picture, we have this 12. That is a segment that is tangent to the circle. And 5 is a radius because it goes from the center of the circle to the perimeter. So we know those two sides of the triangle. We know they meet to form a right triangle because the tangent and the radius are perpendicular. So when we have a right triangle, we can use the Pythagorean theorem to solve for the missing side. So here we're going to use the Pythagorean theorem to solve for x. So remember Pythagorean's theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, where a and b are the legs and c is the hypotenuse. So here we're going to say that 12 squared plus 5 squared equals x squared. 12 and 5 are the legs of our triangle that meet to form the right angle, and the x is the hypotenuse. So now we're just going to use our calculator and we're going to solve for x. So calculator, Desmos graphing calculator, or your cell phone will work for this. So 12 squared, remember squaring your numbers, multiplying it by itself. That would be 144 plus 25 equals x squared. We're going to combine over here 144 plus 25. That gives us 169 is equal to x squared. Now we have to ask ourselves, how do we undo squaring something? What is the inverse of squaring? And that is taking the square root. So we are going to take the square root of both sides. Square root of 169 is 13 equals the squared symbol and the square root cancel each other out, so 13 equals x. Here it's a side length of a triangle, so we're not going to write 13 degrees, it is just 13. So when a tangent and a radius, or a diameter, meet, they are perpendicular to each other. They intersect at a right angle. All right, now we're going to talk about what happens if two tangents meet. How can we find the lengths of those tangents if they're two tangents and they meet outside the circle? So if two tangents meet at the same exterior point, exterior means outside of the circle, then the segments are equal. This is called a circumscribed angle. So this right here, when the two tangents meet at a point outside of the circle, the tangents are equal to each other, and that type of angle does have a name. So to solve for x here, we are going to set the tangents equal to each other, and then solve for x. So we're going to say 3x minus 10 is equal to, I'm going to run out of room here. I'm going to go off the screen. I need to erase and move that over. All right. 3x minus 10 is equal to 2x plus 5. So if we want to add some color to this here, 3x minus 10 is our green tangent. we are going to set that equal to the yellow tangent here, 2x plus 5. And then we're just going to solve that for x. So we want to get x on one side by itself, everything else on the other side. So I'm going to start by adding 10 to both sides. 3x equals 2x plus 15. Now we want to get all of the x's on one side by themselves, so we're going to subtract 2x from both sides to move all of our x's to the left. X is equal to 15. Not 15 degrees. We're not talking about an angle or an arc measure here. We're talking about the length of a tangent. So x is equal to 15. And now we're going to do some examples talking about the two properties that we just went over. So, number 1, determine if segment AB is a tangent segment. So here, what I have written, if segment AB is a tangent to the circle, that means if AB only intersects the circle one time, then segment CA and segment AB are going to be perpendicular because CA is a radius and AB, we're saying if it's a tangent, we know those are going to intersect at a right angle. So let's see if it's true. We are going to use the Pythagorean theorem on all three sides of the triangle and see if we get a true statement. Remember, A and B are legs, C is the hypotenuse. So we want to see if this is true. Does 6 squared plus 8 squared equal, what's the hypotenuse? 10 squared. Squaring a number means you multiply it by itself. So 6 times 6, 36. Plus 8 times 8, what's that? Calculator, Desmos, phone. 64 is equal to 100. Now let's see, is this true? Is 36 plus 64 100? Yes. The answer is yes. So, determine if segment AB is a tangent segment. The answer is yes. You want to write that down so you answer the question. Yes, AB is a tangent segment. I'm going to put a happy face because we are happy about that. We did all that work to get the answer of yes. All right, number 2. Here we have two tangents, x squared and 9. Those are both tangents. They're meeting at an exterior point, so they're meeting outside of the circle, which means to solve for x, we need to set them equal to each other. X squared equals 9. How do we undo squaring something? Take the square root. Here we know that x has to be positive because we're talking about an angle measure, so x equals 3. Sorry, we're not talking about an angle measure, but we are talking about the length of a segment. So distance has to be positive. Number 3, solve for x. So here we have a picture that kind of goes along with this. We know that the radius is 5 because that's what this is telling us. X and the radius meet at a 90-degree angle, which means they're perpendicular, which tells us that segment X is tangent to the circle because X and the radius are perpendicular. And then we know the hypotenuse is 13. So be careful here. We do have to use the Pythagorean theorem to solve for the missing side. So we're going to use a squared plus b squared equals c squared. But you need to make sure, hey, the radius is 5. But what is the length of this whole yellow segment, of the whole diameter? It's not 5, it's 10. So you want to use 10 as your value in the Pythagorean theorem. So 10 squared plus x squared, because we don't know the length of that tangent, is equal to, we do know c, let me erase this, 13 squared, because the hypotenuse is 13. So 100 plus x squared equals 169. Subtract 100 from both sides, we get x squared equals 69. And now we need to take the square root of both sides. 69 is not a perfect square, so you are going to need a calculator for this one. X equals approximately 8.3. Again, not degrees, because we're talking about the length of a segment, not the measure of an arc or an angle. Last one that we are going to do. So solve for x. This one is definitely a little bit trickier because we have to put together a few things that we've learned. So here, this segment that I'm going to highlight in yellow, that is a radius. This segment in blue is also a radius. So what is the value of that yellow leg of the triangle? It's going to be 4. So let's label that. We know that the other leg of the triangle is 10, and we need to solve for the entire hypotenuse before we can solve for x. So we know it's a right triangle. We're going to use the Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. I'm going to call this whole hypotenuse, let's just call it c. So that way it fits right into the formula. So 4 squared plus 10 squared equals c squared. 16 plus 100 equals c squared. 116 equals c squared. Now we need to take the square root of both sides, and we're going to get that 10.77 equals c. Which is nice, but we want to know what x is equal to. So now we need to take the whole length of the hypotenuse, 10.77, and subtract the part we know. So we're going to subtract the 4 to give us the value of x. And when you do that on your calculator, you're going to get that 6.8 is equal to x. Okay, so your assignment for Thursday, March 19th, is to complete the assignment posted on Classroom for Thursday, March 19th, and then make sure you open your What Did I Do Today document and write a complete sentence about what you did today in class.